Name a game show you watch at home and think I could win big on that show.
Family Feud.
And we are hoping and praying that this time round we end up giving someone £1 million.
Game shows sold America one beautiful lie for decades, that any ordinary person could walk off the street, sit under those studio lights, and walk away a winner on pure brains and luck alone. No prep, no inside track, just you versus the buzzer. Turns out the game was sometimes a little more game than show. Today we're counting down 10 game show contestants who had more help than the audience ever knew about. It didn't just change one show, it changed television forever. Number 10, The Price is Right bid, coaching.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sharon did all those trips around the world.
The Price is Right has been a morning ritual since 1972. You stay home sick from school, and suddenly you're an expert on the retail value of a dinette set and a brand new car. The whole premise rests on one beautiful idea, that regular people instinctively know what things cost. Sounds democratic, sounds fair, sounds like America. Except, here's the thing. Audience members waiting in line outside CBS Television City in Los Angeles didn't always arrive equally uninformed. Former producers and longtime staffers have described what became an open secret around the tapings. Superfans who attended multiple tapings, sometimes dozens of them, had mentally cataloged price patterns from previous episodes. Certain models of refrigerators, certain prize packages, certain car brands came up again and again, with prices that didn't swing wildly year to year. But it goes a step further than obsessive fandom. There are documented accounts of contestant hopefuls sharing price cheat sheets in the parking lot before tapings. Little handwritten notes, later typed lists, eventually online forums, all circulating ballpark figures for commonly featured prizes. Were producers technically responsible? No. Did they know it was happening? Almost certainly. The show never addressed it publicly, probably because a contestant who bids $1 over is better television than a contestant who shrugs and guesses. Nobody tunes in to watch someone be genuinely stumped by a blender. Drop a comment if you've ever practiced your bids before a taping. We won't judge you much. Number 9, Wheel of Fortune and the letter, pattern, underground.
I emphasize the. There is only one wheel.
I swear to you, I thought we had a travel wheel.
Pat Sajak has been spinning that wheel since 1983, and Vanna White has been turning letters since the dawn of shoulder pads and leg warmers. The show looks simple. Guess letters, solve the puzzle, don't go bankrupt. But underneath that glossy surface, a very dedicated community of wheel watchers had figured out something producers didn't love talking about. Puzzle categories were predictable, phrase structures repeated, and certain letter combinations appeared with suspicious regularity. By the late 1980s, Wheel of Fortune fan networks, real honest-to-goodness organized fan networks, were compiling puzzle databases and circulating them through newsletters and later early internet message boards. Contestants who did their homework, and some absolutely did, arrived at that podium with a mental library of common puzzle solutions. Now, Wheel's producers eventually caught on and began rotating puzzle formats more aggressively. But for a solid stretch through the late 80s and early 90s, a prepared contestant had a statistically meaningful advantage over someone who just showed up hoping for the best. It's the game show equivalent of memorizing the periodic table before a chemistry test, and then pretending you just have a gift for science. Smart? Absolutely. The spirit of the game? Well, that's a longer conversation. Number 8, the dating game and the pre-interview, prep.
It's the dating game!
Now, not every entry on this list is about cold hard cash. Sometimes the prize was a romantic vacation and a date with a stranger who'd been coached on exactly what to say to win it. The dating game, which ran in various forms from 1965 well into the 90s, was built entirely on spontaneity. Bachelor or bachelorette asks quirky questions. Hidden suitors deliver charming, witty answers. Love supposedly blooms under studio lighting. What viewers didn't know was that producers routinely worked with contestants beforehand, helping them craft funnier, more telegenic answers. This wasn't hidden exactly. It was standard production practice, but it wasn't something the show ever advertised between commercial breaks either. Producers knew that dead air and stammering didn't make for compelling television, so certain suitors were steered toward catchphrases, coached on timing, and given feedback on their delivery before cameras rolled. The result was that what looked like spontaneous charm was often rehearsed charm wearing a leisure suit. Former contestants from multiple eras of the show have described pre-taping sessions where producers essentially workshopped their personalities. Again, not illegal, not even scandalous by Hollywood standards. But the next time you watch an old clip and think, wow, that guy was quick with a one-liner, just know that somebody in a production office probably helped write it. Love finds a way. Sometimes it just needs a script first. Number 7, Press Your Luck and Michael Larson.
This game show contestant is about to go down in TV history as the luckiest man in America.
Okay, now we get into genuinely fascinating territory. If numbers 6 through 10 were a slow simmer, Michael Larson is a full rolling boil. In 1984, an unemployed ice cream truck driver from Ohio named Michael Larson sat down in front of his television and watched Press Your Luck with the kind of obsessive, laser-focused attention that most people reserve for stock portfolios or conspiracy boards. Press Your Luck featured a game board of randomized squares with cash amounts and the dreaded whammy. What Larson figured out, after weeks of recording episodes on VHS and studying the footage frame by frame, was that the board wasn't actually random. It cycled through a limited number of patterns, and 2 specific squares came up with high cash values at a disproportionate rate. Larson memorized the timing sequences, flew to Los Angeles, auditioned for the show, and proceeded to win $110,000 across 2 taping sessions. CBS was suspicious immediately. They pulled the tapes, reviewed his gameplay, brought in outside consultants. What they found wasn't cheating in any traditional sense. Larson hadn't bribed anyone. He hadn't stolen answers. He had simply paid closer attention than anyone in the show's history and exploited a flaw the producers never knew existed. Here's the kicker though, CBS couldn't disqualify him. He hadn't broken any written rule. They paid him, quietly fixed the board pattern, and hoped nobody noticed. The story didn't become widely known for years. Was Michael Larson secretly coached? Not by a person. He was coached by the show itself, rewinding and studying it like game film, until the game had no more secrets. You have to respect the hustle, even if CBS definitely did not. Number 6, Jeopardy, and the clue leaking allegations.
One category for Final Jeopardy today, children's authors, and this clue.
Few shows wear their integrity as proudly as Jeopardy. The whole brand is built on the idea of pure knowledge. No gimmicks, no luck. Just facts rattling around inside your head, faster than the other guys. And for the most part, that reputation is deserved. But there have been persistent nagging allegations over the decades about contestants with unusually convenient category knowledge. In the 1980s and 90s, before the show implemented the rigorous security protocols it uses today, the window between question writing and taping was sometimes narrower than it should have been. Former contestants and crew members have described an environment where category themes, not specific answers but thematic areas, occasionally made their way into conversations that shouldn't have been happening. Now, Jeopardy has never been directly implicated in anything close to the quiz show scandals of the 1950s, but the allegations have been persistent enough, specific enough, and sourced enough that they deserve a spot on this list. The show dramatically tightened its security procedures starting in the 1990s, which is itself an interesting acknowledgement that something needed tightening. Because you don't install a better lock unless someone's been picking the old one. Alex Trebek ran a tight ship, but even the tightest ships have crew members who talk. Number 5, the $64,000 question and the quiet coaching.
And thank you for being with us again. 64,000 welcomes to you all.
Before we get to the granddaddy of all game show scandals, let's talk about its quieter, less investigated sibling. The $64,000 question debuted in 1955 and immediately became a cultural sensation. Ordinary Americans demonstrating extraordinary knowledge in front of millions. The country was obsessed. What the country didn't know was that the line between contestant preparation and producer interference was sometimes barely a line at all. Researchers on the show were tasked with vetting contestants for their expertise, but that vetting process occasionally drifted into something closer to tutoring. Contestants were sometimes told which areas within their specialty were most likely to come up. Not exact questions, not exact answers, just gentle nudges towards certain subjects. It was coaching with plausible deniability built in. If a cobbler from Ohio suddenly knew everything about Baroque music, well, he'd listed it as an interest, hadn't he? The show's producers understood something that modern reality television has never stopped understanding. A compelling contestant is more valuable than an honest one. Audiences wanted heroes, and sometimes heroes needed a little behind-the-scenes help becoming heroic. The $64,000 question ran until 1958, eventually canceled in the wake of a scandal that took down an even bigger show. Which brings us to number 4. Number 4, 21 and the Herbert Stempel setup.
Tonight here on 21, Herbert Stempel, our 29-year-old GI college student, can win $111,500.
Here's where things get genuinely dark. 21 was one of the most popular quiz shows of the late 1950s. 2 contestants in isolation booths answered increasingly difficult questions while America held its breath at home. It was riveting television. It was also, for a significant stretch, completely rigged. Herbert Stempel was a working-class kid from Queens with a photographic memory and the kind of intense, slightly uncomfortable screen presence that producers decided was not what America wanted to root for long-term. He was winning too much, coming across too aggressively, and frankly not charming enough for the audience the show was courting, so producers gave him his instructions. He was told to deliberately miss a question he actually knew the answer to. The question was what film had won Best Picture at the Academy Awards in 1955. Stempel knew the answer was Marty. He answered wrong on purpose. The loss devastated him, not just financially, but personally. He'd been asked to betray his own intelligence on national television. What made it worse was watching his replacement Charles Van Doren become a beloved celebrity while Stempel stewed in Queens knowing exactly how the sausage had been made. Stempel eventually talked, and when he did, it unraveled one of the biggest scandals in television history. He wasn't just a coach contestant, he was a man who'd been handed a script for his own public humiliation and asked to deliver it convincingly, which, remarkably, he did. Number 3, Family Feud and The Survey, Feeding.
Name a game show you watch at home and think I could win big on that show.
Family Feud.
All right, let's come up for air for a second because not every story on this list ends in congressional hearings. Family Feud is comfort food television. 100 people surveyed, top answers on the board, families shouting over each other while a host desperately tries to maintain order. It's chaotic and wonderful, but here's something that's been quietly acknowledged by people who've been through the process. The pre-show interviews that producers conduct with contestant families, ostensibly just to assess personalities for television, sometimes touched on subjects that later appeared in survey questions. Not verbatim, not exactly, but families who paid attention during those conversations sometimes noticed a funny coincidence between what they'd discussed and what ended up on the board. Again, plausible deniability is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Producers might simply have been drawing from the same cultural well of relatable topics. But former contestants from various eras of the show have raised eyebrows at the timing, often enough that it's worth mentioning. Family Feud has always been less about raw knowledge than about reading the room, knowing how 100 surveyed Americans think. And if someone helped you calibrate that read beforehand, well, survey says that's probably an advantage. Number 2, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and the major Charles Ingram coughing scandal.
Hello and welcome to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Yep, we're back. We're back.
This one involves the British military, a coughing husband, a synchronized accomplice in the audience, and £1 million sterling. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire launched in the United Kingdom in 1998 and became a global phenomenon almost overnight. The dramatic music, the lifelines, the "is that your final answer?" tension, it was appointment television on 2 continents. In 2001, Major Charles Ingram sat in the hot seat and, with the help of his wife Diana and an accomplice named Tequin Whittick, seated in the audience, proceeded to cheat his way to the top prize through an audacious coughing system. Whittick would cough at the correct answer as Ingram read options aloud. The major would waffle, reconsider, and somehow always land on the right choice. Producers noticed something was off during the taping itself. The episode was held, the footage reviewed, and what they found was one of the most brazen coaching operations in game show history, hiding in plain, well-muffled sound. All 3 were convicted of deception in 2003. Ingram never received the prize money. The case became a documentary, a stage play, and a television drama. because when your cheating method involves coughing in a studio full of microphones, you've essentially written the first act yourself. This wasn't subtle. It wasn't sophisticated. It was a military man and his wife treating a primetime quiz show like an operation that somehow almost worked. Number 1, 21, and Charles Van Doren.
From New York City, Mr. Charles Van Doren, and returning with $69,500 from Forest Hills, New York.
And here we are, the one that didn't just end careers. It ended an entire era of television and sent shockwaves through American culture that are still being felt today. Charles Van Doren was everything 1950s America wanted in a hero. He was handsome. He was from an enormously distinguished literary family. His father, Mark Van Doren, was one of the most respected poets in the country. Charles was an English instructor at Columbia University. He was, in every conceivable way, the kind of man that post-war America had decided it deserved to admire. And he was being handed the answers to 21 before every single taping. Producer Dan Enright and the show's team coached Van Doren extensively. They gave him questions and answers in advance. They coached him on how to hesitate for dramatic effect, how to mop his brow convincingly, how to make the performance of thinking look authentic. Van Doren wasn't just a coached contestant. He was essentially an actor playing a genius on a show that America believed was real. He won $129,000 over 14 appearances. He appeared on the cover of Time magazine. He was offered a contract with NBC as a cultural commentator. America loved him completely and unconditionally because America didn't know. When Herbert Stempel finally talked and congressional hearings began in 1959, Van Doren initially denied everything. Then, in one of the most remarkable moments in television history, he appeared before the House Subcommittee on Legislative Oversight and confessed. He lost the NBC contract. He resigned from Columbia. He spent decades in voluntary obscurity, eventually writing and teaching quietly away from any spotlight. The fallout was seismic. Quiz shows were effectively wiped off primetime television for nearly 3 decades. The public trust in the medium was shattered in a way that took a generation to rebuild. Congress passed laws making it a federal crime to deceive the public in a broadcast contest, all because one charming man with good posture had been handed answers and asked to pretend he'd earned them. Robert Redford made a film about it in 1994, simply called Quiz Show. It's one of the finest examinations of American self-deception ever put on screen, and it holds up completely because the central question it asks has never stopped being relevant. What does it say about us that we wanted so badly to believe in him that we never thought to ask whether it was real? Charles Van Doren gave the country a hero. The country just never asked where he came from. From parking lot price sheets to congressional testimony, game shows have always been a mirror held up to what we want to believe about fairness, intelligence, and the American dream. The scandals aren't really about cheating. They're about how desperately we wanted the game to be real in the first place.